Welcome to another program of The Public Interest. I am Annette Ferguson, and on today's program we will be discussing the PPPC's damage to parliamentary and local democracy. Sharing in today's discussion with me is the leader of the People's National Congress Reform, Majority Leader of the National Assembly, and Chairman of a Partnership for National Unity, Brigadier David Granger. Good day, sir.
Thank you very much, Anna.
And welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Brigadier, can you explain what are the effects of the prorogation of the National Assembly on the Guyanese community and internationally?
Well, to start with, the prorogation has lasted, together with the recess, lasted for 6 months. And when you consider that in any democracy, if the parliament has not sat for 6 months, it means the people's business is not being dealt with. So I would say that it has already had a dampening effect on public discourse, because the people's representatives have not been able to discuss national business. And secondly, it's had a dampening effect on the community, because business is slowing down. People expect that general and regional elections will be called. We haven't been told a date. And there's some nervousness, there's some uncertainty. So the impact of prorogation is easy to see in every sphere of public life. People are looking forward to elections, but the campaign hasn't started. The businessmen know that the financial year has started, but they don't know when elections are going to be held. So there's great uncertainty. Tourists don't want to come, they don't know what to expect. I would say that the failure to call general and regional elections and the extension of prorogation have had a dampening effect on the country as a whole, and there's great uncertainty, and it should be brought to an end.
Okay. Recently we heard calls coming from the British High Commissioner, Mr. Andrew R., and we would have seen the comments made by Clement Rohi and Minister Rodrigues. What are your views on their comment?
Well, we have taken the position too that the prorogation was an aberration, it's a travesty to start with. So the British High Commissioner, I think, is treading on a well-worn path, because the Guyanese people have been offended. The Speaker has spoken about it, and we're all offended by the act of prorogation. In fact, the previous week, a minister in the Foreign Office had condemned the prorogation. As far as our own ministers are concerned, Clement Rohi, a former foreign minister, and Caroline Rodrigues, the current foreign minister, I think they're way out of line. We're talking about one of the major countries of the world, United Kingdom, a member of the Security Council, and the British High Commissioner Andrew Eyre, has simply repeated what other Western governments have been saying. He repeated basically what the Organization of American States has been saying, that this prorogation is an aberration. This prorogation is actually a denial of democracy. It is preventing the representatives of the majority of the Guyanese people from meeting to discuss their business. So when you hear the Minister of Home Affairs, Clement Rohi, or the Minister of Foreign Affairs making those remarks, they're completely out of touch, because nowadays in the international community there are certain norms. This is no longer a domestic or municipal issue. This is now an international issue. Guyana is a member of the international community. Guyana is a member of several organizations, the Commonwealth, the United Nations, for example. And it is my understanding that the prorogation and the failure to hold meetings of the National Assembly constitute a breach of the Charter of the CARICOM, Charter for Civil Society, as well as the Commonwealth Charter. So the British High Commissioner is on firm ground when he criticized the government, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Minister of Home Affairs are quite out of place by criticizing that condemnation. They are out of order, and they must get in line with the international community.
Okay. Brigadier, I know for a fact that the British High Commissioner said that it seems as though Guyana would have to come on the review. But from your perspective, what benefits do you see Guyana gaining from such sanctions?
Well, the sanctions inevitably will affect all Guyanese citizens. We will all suffer once there are sanctions. The question is who will suffer most, and whether that period of suffering, which is bound to be short, is going to have the effect of bringing about a change in government's behavior. I do believe so. Sanctions would have a short-term effect, and we all hope that the government will be wise enough to act so that the sanctions are not prolonged. Other countries in the Commonwealth have been sanctioned before for breach of democracy. I know Fiji has been sanctioned, Pakistan has been sanctioned, Zimbabwe I think has been sanctioned. And it is in the interest of Guyana to avoid these sanctions, because these sanctions could have a deleterious effect on the economy and of course the way Guyana is perceived in other countries. You know, Guyana wants to attract foreign direct investment, Guyana wants tourists to come, Guyana wants to be able to access donor funding, you know, around the world. But when it is perceived widely that Guyana is a pariah state, Guyana is an outcast, there will be less willingness on the part of donor countries to pump money into what is becoming a failed state, to pump money into a country which does not practice democratic behavior. So Guyana is bound to be the loser, even if in the short term sanctions have an economic impact on the population because of denial of foreign funding. In the long term, I think we'll suffer. So I would say that the government be well advised to avoid sanctions and to comply with international norms. The government should end prorogation, let us have elections, and let us get back on the track for democracy.
Okay, Brigadier, let us now turn our attention to local democracy, because the international agencies, they too have been calling for local government elections to be held. So my question to you, why the reluctance of the Donald Ramatar's administration for not calling local government elections?
Well, I think it's a long story. As you know, local government elections have not been held in Guyana for 21 years, since 1994. And this is entirely a period under the PPPC administration, because they got into office 22 years ago, in nearly 23 now, in 1992. At present, the reason for not calling election is that the government, the executive, the PPP does not want to lose control of local government bodies. It is not a matter of efficiency, it's a matter of control. Right now, under the old legislation, the PPP has the power to intervene, to intrude, to even obstruct the way local government bodies function. For example, the municipalities and even the regions, and also the neighborhoods. So what Ramatara sees, what the PPP sees, is that reform of the local government system will remove control from their hands and put it in the hands of democratically elected officials. Now, they're, as the saying goes, like a bull goes slaughterhouse. They're going slowly because they realize that at the end of the road, they are going to be slaughtered by the electorate, you know, of course, not in actual terms, but in terms of their electoral defeat. And they are delaying that because they know that over the last 22 years, the neighborhoods and the municipalities have suffered. Look at Georgetown. Hardly a week passes and there's not some clash between the central government appointed town clerk, Ms. Suba, and the elected officials in the city council. And this is a denial of democracy. But the government is aware that Ms. Suba's administration is inefficient, but they maintain her there because she does the bidding of the government. So, in answer to your question, if I can put it briefly, the government is delaying or has delayed the holding of local government election because there is a clear expectation that local government elections will bring about a change in the legislation and also a change in the way the neighborhoods are being governed. And it is quite clear to me that many of these changes will result in a lessening and a diminution of PPP power and control and an increase in democratic control. And PPP is not interested in democracy. That's the long and short of the story.
The president announced some time ago in 2014 that the second quarter of 2015 local government elections will be held, or a date will be set for local government elections. What are your views of his comment?
Well, it is obviously an untruth. He's obviously being untruthful. And we can trace the president's words back to the PPP manifesto of 2011. And it is clear now that the country is preparing to go for general and regional elections. So it means that there's a likelihood that the year 2015 will expire without local government elections being held. That will be a travesty. What I can say is that a Partnership for National Unity is committed to have local government elections. Let us get the general and regional elections behind us. Let us elect a new government, and that new government, under Partnership for National Unity, will hold local government elections within 12 months, as soon as it could be arranged by the Guyana Elections Commission. Now, let me make this point. If you go around the country, from Region 1 to Region 10, look at the state of the neighborhoods and the municipalities, and you will see that much of the degradation is a result of the absence of local democracy. That is why APNU has called for the capitals, the administrative centers of the 4 hinterland regions, the Barima-Waini, Region 1, the Kuyuni-Mazaruni, Region 7, the Potaro-Separuni, Region 8, and the Rupununi, Region 9. Those centers, Mabaruma, Bartica, Madia, and Letem, are to be made into municipalities. And the PPP is aware of that. We will have strong municipalities, and that's why they're holding back local government reform. This country can be transformed with local government elections, but the PPP is concerned only with the preservation of its own power. That is what the battle is about. The battle is on the one hand for democracy, and on the other hand, the PPP is trying to defend its dictatorial and undemocratic local government system. Okay.
Brigadier, coming out from the ambassador of UK, he made reference to the fact that in a recent statement that there is a political gridlock, and this it is a Guyanese problem, and it requires a Guyanese solution. My question to you then is, does the APNU has a plan to deal with this political gridlock?
To our way of thinking, the gridlock, if you can call it that, is caused by the government. From the start, a Partnership for National Unity called for the establishment of a government of national unity. It called for inclusionary democracy. It called for all of the parties in the National Assembly to sit at the table and resolve our problems. There need not be gridlock. If there's a budget, for example, why can't we sit down and work out the important elements of the budget? We wouldn't agree on all of the details, but there doesn't need to be a car crash. There doesn't need to be a collision. What we need is for the parties to work in a more consensual fashion. That is what we're talking about when we mean the government of national unity. This so-called gridlock is an invention of the People's Progressive Party. This so-called gridlock has come about because the PPP is not prepared to sit down and talk with a Partnership for National Unity and the Alliance for Change. So our solution is to go to the elections, win the elections, and establish a government of national unity.
Thank you very much, Brigadier. Viewers, this is all the time we have for the public interest. I am Annette Ferguson, and today we were discussing PPP's damage to parliamentary and local democracy. And with me was the leader of the People's National Congress Reform, the leader of a Partnership for National Unity, and the leader of the majority, Brigadier David Granger. Do join us for another program of The Public Interest. Thank you.